Nation! Welcome to today's episode of the SportsRoom TalkShow, as well as the Rivalries Series. I'm your host, UngarToTheMax, and I appreciate you tuning in, whether it's here on the UngarToTheMax YouTube channel, or if you happen to be tuning in via Anchor, Spotify, however you listen to your podcasts. So, there's a lot of great aspects of sports that you can look at and analyze on a day-to-day basis. It seems to change every single day. But for me, aside from looking at opponents' schedules or list of opponents and deciding when games are going to happen, another one of my favorite parts is studying the rivalries and determining what makes a great rivalry. Because the concrete definition of a rivalry is, in college sports, it's the two schools are close to each other in proximity, and they're similar sizes, and maybe they have the same number of national championships, or they're fighting for the top recruits in their state. Or when it comes to, say, the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees, they're in the same division, the American League East, and they're both East Coast cities that are very well known, Boston and New York. Or, for example, you have Boston and Los Angeles, the Celtics and the Lakers. Probably the two most storied teams in NBA history, and they both have 17 NBA championships. So no wonder they have a rivalry. But for me, like I said, I know there's a definitive definition, but I still feel like it's a subjective thing. For example, my definition of the word rivalry is not the same as Jason's definition of the word rivalry, and it's not the same as Brian's definition of the word rivalry. And my top 5 current rivalries are not going to be the exact same as Jason's list, and they're not going to be the exact same as Brian's list. We may have the same ones, but it's probably not going to be in the same order. So for me, my top rivalry right now is the North Carolina Tar Heels against the Duke Blue Devils. And we saw this rivalry fully on display in the spotlight on Saturday night for the Final Four. It was the first time ever that these two teams had met in the Final Four. Crazy to think about. And for North Carolina to come away with that victory, now they have 2 trump cards on Duke. Because, number one, they beat the Blue Devils in Mike Krzyzewski's final game at Cameron Indoor, so they'll always be able to hold that over Duke. And number 2, they beat Duke in Coach K's final game, or what ended up being Coach K's final game anyway, and they beat them in their first matchup in the Final Four. Now, I get it. Saying that Duke, North Carolina is a one-sport rivalry might not sound right, because if you go to those schools, you probably think of it as, oh, we're rivals in college basketball, we're rivals in college football, we're rivals in college hockey, college baseball. The list could go on and on. But I have to look at it as an outsider, because I'm not an alumni of Duke University, and I'm not an alumni of the University of North Carolina. And I'm not a Duke fan, and I'm not a North Carolina fan. I just like good matchups. And for me, that's why I think of Duke, North Carolina as a one-sport rivalry. But people think of that and they say, oh, so the rivalry can't be that good then, because it's only one sport. Are you kidding me? No, it's an amazing rivalry. If you look at the stats, they're just about even in their last 100 games. Although I believe North Carolina has the slight edge. I'll have to double check on that. So I'm looking at the stats right now from North Carolina's website. And from January 27th, 1999 to March 5th, 2022, North Carolina has 33 losses and 21 wins in the season series. Or in the overall rivalry, I should say, when it comes to men's college basketball. Of course, after Saturday's game, it would be 22 wins and 33 losses. So that's a difference of 11. 11 might seem like a big margin, but in the grand scheme of things, it's really not. So you can see these two teams are extremely close. When my dad and I actually went to North Carolina to see the Carolina Hurricanes play the Columbus Blue Jackets and then the Charlotte Hornets against the Miami Heat, we actually we went to Durham to see Duke, and then we drove over to Chapel Hill to see North Carolina. So I guess inadvertently, I put myself right in the middle of the rivalry. I didn't choose a side when it came to watching that game on Saturday. I just wanted to watch it because it's Duke, Carolina. Do I need to say more? My second favorite rivalry just so happens to be another college rivalry. But it's not on college basketball. It's in college football. The Iron Bowl. Alabama and Auburn. I love this rivalry. Especially when the game is in Auburn. And that's because when you think of games in Auburn, you think of the kick six, you think of the game in, I believe it was 2018 where Alabama was the number one team and Auburn was able to knock them off. But Alabama still ended up going to the college football playoff, if I remember correctly. Yes, that is. And then, of course, if you look at when the game was at Alabama, you have the game with Cam Newton where Auburn was able to come back and beat Alabama, and they would go on to win the national championship. So my third favorite rivalry, I'm going to come home because I am a Cleveland Browns YouTuber after all. I'm going to say it's the Cleveland Browns, not against the Pittsburgh Steelers, because for me, Browns-Steelers right now is not a rivalry. I know that's very controversial to say, but it's not for me. The Browns need to win in the series more. But instead, I am going with Browns against the Ravens. Yes, that's right. I'm saying Browns-Ravens. And it actually has nothing to do with the fact that Art Modell moved the team to Baltimore. Because think about this. Yes, the Ravens are essentially the old Browns. However, the name Browns, the colors of brown and orange, and the history all stayed here in Cleveland. So essentially the Ravens were an expansion team that was hitting the reset button. But still, if you look at the recent games between these two, it's come right down to the wire. Go back and watch that Monday night football game where Baltimore won 47-42. Or how about the Week 17 matchup from 2018 where if Baltimore won, they won the division. But if the Browns won, then the Pittsburgh Steelers would win the division. That's what I like in a rivalry. Yeah, bragging rights are nice, and that's a big part of some rivalries. But I like it better when there's something on the line. Whether that's, say, if the Browns win, then they knock the Ravens out of the playoffs. Or if the game on the division title is on the line. Whoever wins the division. Whoever loses goes home. Or let's say, I'll take it to the NBA for just a second. Let's say the Cavaliers and Celtics are playing each other. And maybe you consider that a rivalry. Spoiler alert, that's not on my top 5. But I'm just saying for the sake of argument. That let's say the Cavs and Celtics do have a rivalry. And they're playing each other. Then if they're playing each other and they're right next to each other in the conference standings, the winner jumps up and maybe goes to the 3 seed and the loser goes to the 6 seed. Something like that. That's what I like in a rivalry. And I feel like I'm getting that more with Browns-Ravens. It feels like more often than not with these two, there is something on the line. It's not as simple as just bragging rights or the Ravens being able to say, yeah, we own you. Not like Packers-Bears where Aaron Rodgers just said, I own you. But, yeah. My fourth favorite rivalry is the Pittsburgh Penguins against the Philadelphia Flyers. Yes, that's right. I am including the NHL on here. Now, with the Penguins, they didn't get very good until Mario Lemieux got there. Before that, the Penguins were just kind of they were terrible. Straight up, they were not very good. But since Mario Lemieux got there, yeah, their fortunes turned around. And the Battle of Pennsylvania just never disappoints. When these two teams match up, oh yeah, find me some popcorn. I want a big honking TV screen up there, and I'm just going to be like this. Please, something happen. I want like a melee, a brawl. Yeah, I don't like to see that type of thing, but when these two and how there are usually fights in hockey, yeah, I would say that. I want that. And again, it's the Battle of Pennsylvania, but it's not as simple as the Penguins and Flyers are just playing each other and it's bragging rights on the line. I've seen these two match up in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, if the Penguins want to get to the Stanley Cup final, they got to go through the Flyers. If the Flyers want to get to the Stanley Cup final, they got to go through the Penguins. If the Penguins want to get to the Stanley Cup playoffs in the first place, guess who's usually in their way? The Philadelphia Flyers. If the Flyers want to get to the Stanley Cup playoffs, who tends to stand in their way? The Pittsburgh Penguins. Sidney Crosby is one of the most hated people in Philadelphia. You've heard him say in the press conferences, post-game, I don't like them. Yes, guess what, Sidney Crosby? I don't think the Flyers like you either. And my fifth favorite rivalry, see, here I could say Red Sox-Yankees, but for me, that rivalry, the rivalry's still there, but it doesn't quite have that same oomph to it that I want it to. I just don't quite feel it anymore. I could say Lakers-Celtics, but again, it doesn't quite have that same push to it. Because Paul Pierce isn't there, Ray Allen's not there, Kevin Garnett's not there, Pau Gasol's not there, Kobe Bryant, rest in peace, he's not there. A lot of those central figures are not there. Magic Johnson's not walking through that door. Larry Bird's not walking through that door. Kevin McHale's not walking through that door. And Shaq's not walking through that door. So, yeah. And the Lakers, they're struggling right now. And that's putting it mightily. So, for my fifth favorite rivalry, I'm going to go with another hockey rivalry. And yes, it includes Boston once again. Or I shouldn't say once again because I haven't mentioned Boston on this list so far. But I am going with the Boston Bruins against the Montreal Canadiens. Two original six franchises that could not be more different. But they absolutely hate each other. Now, I know Montreal is struggling right now, to put it lightly. They're one of the worst teams in the NHL. And Boston, they've come on strong. They're playing better right now. But I love this rivalry still. If Boston and Montreal are playing, I'm going to find a way to watch it. So that's my top 5 list. But I have a couple honorary mentions. As I talked about in my previous video, I think Cavaliers and 76ers is an emerging rivalry. So I am going to make that an honorary mention. Yes, I talked about this yesterday. I'm putting a lot of stock in these 4 games, but I don't think that's a bad thing to do. Some rivalries start after just one season. Some rivalries happen when there's a spark of some sort. It doesn't matter. All you need is something to happen. Whether it's a he said type thing, maybe it's a he said, she said, whatever. Whatever it is, once a rivalry gets a spark, it happens and it's ignited. Look at Cavs Warriors. That rivalry had a spark and it lasted for what, 4 years? And many people argued that if Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving don't get injured in 2015, they win that series, and the Warriors and Cavaliers are tied two championships apiece. And many people believe that Kevin Durant joining Golden State ruined the rivalry. I 100% agree with that, because once Kevin Durant joined, the Warriors had Draymond Green, or as I call him, Drama Queen, Klay Thompson, who's my favorite player on the Warriors, because I just love that he's not only a shooter, but he's also one of the best defenders in the league. They have Stephen Curry, who is the greatest shooter of all time. You can't deny that. He just broke Ray Allen's record for the most three-pointers in a game, for crying out loud. And the Cavs, we remade our roster. So in 2018, we made a lot of trades, which completely reshaped our roster. We brought in Rodney Hood, Jordan Clarkson, George Hill, and Larry Nance Jr. So that was all in an effort to match up with Golden State. It didn't end up working because the Warriors swept us, which I didn't think we belonged in that 2018 series, but whatever. So I would say Cavs Warriors is an honorary mention, but it's not a rivalry anymore. Sorry. Some other notable rivalries that I could have put on the list, but didn't quite make the cut. I would say Timberwolves Nuggets is a potential rivalry that could end up being on the list. I think Nuggets Grizzlies is a rivalry that could end up being on the list, because I think Phoenix has a bit of a limit on what they can do. Chris Paul's getting up there in age. We don't know if DeAndre Ayton's going to re-sign there. Devin Booker, he should be in the MVP discussion. I don't know why he's not, but he most certainly should be. But how long can he keep doing this? And with Golden State, Steph is getting up there in age. Klay Thompson is coming off 2 major injuries. Draymond Green has been in and out of the lineup. We haven't seen James Wiseman for a large majority of the season, if at all. And so I think there's a little bit of a clock ticking on both of those teams. Whereas with Memphis and Denver, they're both young teams. I know that Jamal Murray hasn't played it all this season, and I know that Michael Porter Jr. hasn't really played it all this season. But even still, Denver is staying up in the top half of the Western Conference. And did anybody see the Memphis Grizzlies being the number 2 team in the Western Conference? I mean, come on. They're 18-2 without Ja Morant. 18-2. What? Ja Morant is their best player by far. He's a superstar. He's already at that level. I think even though Memphis has that good of a record without him, he should still be in the MVP discussion. Because, again, was anybody expecting the Grizzlies to be this good? I would say no. So look out for Grizzlies Nuggets. Looking at some NFL rivalries, it's hard to say with this because, like, Patriots Colts, that rivalry isn't really there anymore. When I look at Washington against Dallas, you could make an argument that rivalry is still around, but once Washington dropped their name, which I choose not to say, even before they announced they were changing it, once they did change it, did the rivalry lose a little bit of its luster? I would say yes. Cowboys-Eagles, it's a historic rivalry, yes, but for me, Philadelphia is one of the best sports cities in the U.S., bar none. But I want to put it in my top 5. I really do, but I don't know. There's just something missing from that rivalry. I'm not sure what that something is, but something's missing from it. Let's see. Bears-Packers? Nope. Packers have dominated the Bears, and I think the Bears' run to winning the NFC North in 2018, complete and total fluke. I don't think it was really the start of anything. I mean, look, they ended up firing Matt Nagy and Brian Pace, and they got rid of Mitch Trubisky. Aaron Rodgers is still there, although I have no idea who the heck he's going to throw to. Raiders, Chiefs, yeah, that rivalry is still very much there, but are the Chiefs still going to have that same punch to them since they don't have Tyreek Hill? I'm not sure if they will or not. I'm really not. It'll be interesting. I think the rivalry that really could get on my top 5 next year is Raiders-Chargers. Think about it. Look, think about how that game ended last season. You could tell the Raiders were clearly playing for the tie because they knew, okay, we end up in the playoffs, they end up in the playoffs, and we keep Pittsburgh out. But then Chargers coach Brandon Staley goes and I guess he outthought himself. That's how I'll say it. Because he goes and calls a timeout, and the Raiders say, oh, you're going to call a timeout? So you're not playing for the tie. Well, guess what? Then we're going to go and beat you. And then what do the Chargers do in the offseason? They go and add Khalil Mack. They go and add J.C. Jackson to bolster their defense. And how do the Raiders counter? They say, okay, you know that wide receiver out in Green Bay who many say is the best wide receiver in the NFL right now? Devontae Adams, former teammate of Derek Carr at Fresno State. Yeah, we're just going to go and get him. Because now the Raiders have Josh Jacobs at running back, Devontae Adams at wide receiver, Darren Waller at tight end, Hunter Renfrow at the other wide receiver spot. Yeah, good luck, LA, guarding that. So, those are some of my favorite rivalries. I'm very interested. What are some of your favorite rivalries? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Did I leave a rivalry off my top 5 list that you think I should have put in there? Do you think I have them in the wrong order? Give me your thoughts. So I reached out to my fellow sports journal and the official host of Manalytics as usual, Jason Vaughn, to get his opinion about what makes a great rivalry and what are his top 5 current favorite rivalries right now. I also reached out to semi-pro basketball owner Brian Essence Collins, who also happens to be my instructor here at the Ohio Media School, and we're going to get his thoughts on what makes a great rivalry and what are his top 5 current favorite rivalries right now.
Thanks, Josh. I think that's a great definition and also a great list. When I think about some of the greatest sports rivalries, especially current ones, my criteria has a lot to do, of course, with talent level. You know, you can't have a team that you are rivals with that just destroys you all the time and you never win. But I think a lot of the best rivalries come from proximity. When teams are very close. I know that recently, and Josh, you touched on the Cavs and the Warriors. Obviously, the Bay Area and Cleveland are not very close, so that was more just talent-wise, and they were in the finals so many times. But some of my favorite ongoing rivals happen to be very close. My number one, I'll save for the end for you. But I love a lot of the SEC rivalries. Alabama and Auburn is an excellent rivalry. Of course, being here in Ohio, Ohio State, Michigan, particularly football stands out to me, but I understand that the rivalry extends beyond just one sport for a lot of the alumni. The Dodgers and the Giants is great. Of course, we just saw an excellent game with UNC and Duke. Another incredible basketball rivalry. I'm sure they will tell you that it extends beyond just men's basketball. I'm sure it does with women's basketball and other sports. But when I think UNC Duke, I think Coach K, I think Roy Williams, I think, men's college basketball. My favorite pick, and a lot of this has to do with, this is one that I inherited growing up, is Kentucky and Louisville, or Louisville, but Louisville. That's my favorite sports rivalry. I grew up watching Kentucky. My dad went there for his master's. My uncle met my aunt going to Kentucky. My grandma lived in Kentucky. My parents lived in Kentucky for a little while. So it's not a front runner thing. I've been watching them my whole life. I've got to go with you, UK. UK and Louisville has to probably be my number one. It's fun to watch. Pitino's been a great coach at both, and seeing the vitriol and the hatred that they have for each other is fun. Even though we've got their number, those are my picks.
Yeah, so rivalries, that's an interesting topic, man. I got a different view on rivalries as usual. But I would say my top 5 rivalries of all time, I know how you feel about it, but I think Golden State versus the Cavs. That's number 5 on my list. Of course, being down 3-1, going against the best team ever assembled. That's a rivalry. And a rivalry, in my opinion, is just like similar with the Oscars. If you do something that makes the other person that you don't know mad, right, and get your blood boiling, you're doing something. That's a rivalry. So I used to just like the Warriors because of that. And I know a lot of people don't look at it that way, but I do. Number 4, I had Yankees versus the Red Sox. Of course, history. Seeing Zimmerman being thrown out by Manny Ramirez. That always stuck in my head. That was weird, but that's a rivalry. Number 3, I had Ali versus Frazier. That, of course, Ali won two of the fights. Lost one to Frazier, but Joe Frazier was one of the up-and-coming fighters. Knocked out Ali, but Ali went ahead and redeemed himself. But I think that was probably one of the best boxing matches ever assembled. Number 2, I had Ohio State versus Michigan, or Team Up North. I apologize for saying their name. But I just like those guys. Every time we played them, I feel the passion. I get the energy of my blood boiling because I despise Michigan. And that, again, that's a rivalry. But my number 1 all-time rivalry, the Browns versus Steelers. Overall, we've lost to them 79 times. We only beat them 61 times, only tied once overall. But what people miss the boat on that is, until they had Roethlisberger, we kind of was leading in that all-time rivalry. So the numbers kind of shifted. But how could you not like this? I mean, how could you not hate the Steelers? I see a lot of Cleveland fans that are Steelers fans. Only people I give exception to is people that live in Youngstown, or if you further down, like close to Cincinnati area. But if you up anywhere in Northeast Ohio or Columbus, how could you not be a Browns fan? That's something you got to ask yourself, man. But I think that's the best rivalry of all time, Browns versus Steelers. Go Browns.
Those were great lists by both Brian and Jason. Very opinionated, I would say. So, do you agree with what they said? Do you agree with what I said? Or do you completely disagree? Leave your list in the comment section below. And I might just address it on the next episode of the Rivalries Series here on the SportsRoom TalkShow, courtesy of UngarToTheMax. Thank you for tuning in. I really and truly appreciate it. And I will see you, or you will hear me, on the next episode.